Hello and welcome to the DSP Leaders World Forum 2020. This year we have swapped the regal pleasures of Windsor for the delights of Yorkshire as we have moved the entire event online. The whole world is coming to terms with maintaining business as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to disrupt all our lives, and our very best wishes to you and all your families at this time. So we're bringing you this year's DSP Leaders World Forum from our new studios in the north of England with the help of an incredible lineup of panellists who will be joining us from their homes and makeshift offices around the world. We have 5 days of debate and discussion as we continue to chart the evolution of CSPs to DSPs, digital services providers. But before we dive into the individual sessions, we're going to preview the event and hopefully whet your appetite for the treats ahead. And who better to help guide us than Chris Lewis, founder of Lewis Insights and the genius behind the annual Great Telco Debate. Plus, we have the fully caffeinated Ray Maistre, TelecomTV's new editorial director. Gentlemen, hello, welcome to both of you.
Hi there.
Hi there, Guy.
Chris, last year you and I shared the moderating duties at the inaugural DSP Leaders World Forum. Terrific event, but what was your main takeaway from the event?
There was so much got discussed during the day and a half. I think the main takeaways were that the technical building blocks are in place, that they're there, the sort of softwarization move to cloud, but that the cultural shift and the adaptation of the industry to fit around other businesses, other industries such as TV and sport, and of course the enterprise side, that needs to be blended in there as well to come with the right balance for the role of the digital service provider in this emerging economy.
Now, we continued the debates in December last year at the Great Telco Debate. We keep the discussion going, keep the conversation going. What do we need to look at this week at the event in order to keep this momentum going on? What does the industry need to focus on now?
I don't think it's changed dramatically. I think the evidence around the way the industry has coped with the COVID issue is that in many ways we have robust networks that can support most of the activities required. But behind that, underlying that, is still the need to generate a much more agile, much more versatile set of services to fit in with whatever ecosystem, whatever business models are actually going to evolve during the next 5, 10, 20 years. So I think, yes, of course, focus on the technology to make sure that it's in the right place to deliver against its technical issues, but then focus on the customer and how we get to the customer. And I think to change the perspective of the telecom industry, where we talk about being focused on the customer, but actually, we focus from an inside out perspective and not always from the perspective of the customer. So I think shifting that balance towards the customer and then thinking about how customers in business and consumer areas, how they get to consume the services, because it may be via third parties, it may be a combination of services. So I think what will be interesting to me will be how that cultural change is carrying on through the telcos to become DSPs, and then how the shift to more software-centric, obviously cloud-based services, and then bringing 5G, obviously leveraging AI, of course, and how that begins to shape the future for everybody.
Thanks, Chris. Now, Ray, you bring a new perspective to DSP Leaders. This is your first DSP Leaders. What are you looking out for this week? What are you anxious to see discussed?
Well, I think, as Chris mentioned, a lot of the topics and trends and discussion points are the same. But as we know, an awful lot is changing. Every week, this industry seems to be changing. But there's some things that remain constant, and that is the focus on technology and innovation in technology. And we're going to be hearing quite a bit about that this week. There's also the people angle, which I think there's a different perspective on that on the people side of things. It's not only about having strong leaders and solid teams, but the skills requirements are changing an awful lot. And we've got some great sessions focusing on that this week. And then, of course, the thing that drives every industry and is behind so many, if not all, decisions, and that's money. Not only how much is it going to cost to put some of these new innovations and new processes in place, but how to make money, because everybody needs to make money to survive. And goodness knows there's a lot of companies out there right now that are looking at their future and figuring out how they can get to 2025 and still be around. So how to make money, no matter what part of this industry you're in, is absolutely critical. And it's great to see that we've got that on the agenda this week.
Too true, absolutely. Now, I know the two of you are going to be following along to the sessions this week, but the three of us will be convening on Friday, once it's all over, to recap what we saw, what we heard. But we'll also be analysing the programmes later with our new Extra Shot programme, which is a chance for all our viewers to get involved. Ray, how can people get involved? How can you encourage them to take part? And what are we trying to do with this?
I think we're looking for people to get in touch with us here at TelecomTV, and people can get in touch with me either via email at ray@telecomtv.com or via Twitter or via LinkedIn, because we're looking for feedback. We want to find out what people, having seen the sessions, what they're thinking of what they're, we'll be hearing a lot from very senior people in the industry, what their reaction is to what those people have been saying, but what their experiences are in the industry. And we want to be discussing, following up the key themes in our Extra Shot programs. So we're looking for feedback from the industry about just about anything. And obviously, we'll also be covering the incredibly key topics of coffee, movies, sport, and which cocktail you should be drinking at the end of each of these kind of sessions.
These are all crucially important topics, not just at this time, but at any time in our industry. We will make sure they will get equally covered. We've got two sessions coming up later today on day one. We've got our first session, which is geopolitics and the new economic models, followed by a session on what we're terming edgenomics, which is how we create a viable business case for edge computing. Chris, what are you looking forward to in the geopolitics sessions and also maybe the edge session?
Well, geopolitics, as we know, is that there's so much going on there between North America and the China axes of power. Of course, with the other shift, which is really interesting, is between the traditional suppliers who've supported the telecom industry throughout, and of course the web scale players who are gaining in power all the time. I'm sure we'll see much about the relative power of these different suppliers, because fundamentally the building blocks, to Ray's point about technology, the building blocks are there. The question is who puts them together to address the market and address the needs and have that proximity to the customer. And then with proximity in mind, of course, we've got this issue of edge where we're bringing together storage, compute and connect, which of course come from three somewhat separate industries. So trying to build that model in conjunction with 5G, a new service of delivery, which might come along with that. I think that it's part of the shift of the industry to be more focused, more wrapped around the customer, rather than getting the customer to force fit itself in whatever mode into the way the technology works. So edgenomics for me is about mass compute, mass storage, mass connectivity or hyperconnectivity, but then how do we put that into a business model and who delivers it, to my previous point, because I think many different players, different channels can deliver it. Telco, having been accustomed to be the big fish in the sea, is now a much smaller fish because there are bigger players around. They're generally local, national players. So I think that edgenomics will give a new focus to people. Obviously, it brings in the IoT question, whether we can raise money from that as well. But no, I think the two things fit very well together. To Ray's point about follow the money, we've got to invest in this in order to deliver the services that fit best into the future economy.
And Ray, we've got the £2 today. We're looking at strategy, we're looking at technology, and wrapping it all together is the business case for both of these. What are you hoping to hear there?
Well, I think the big story here about supply chains that really came to the fore last year with the impact of the relationship between the US administration and the Chinese suppliers. And that has had a massive knock-on effect across lots of different suppliers and lots of different supply chains. And obviously, supply chain is a really big issue during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I expect to hear and looking forward to hear about how the industry is coping with that. And in terms of edgeonomics, well, when I started as a journalist, nothing's really changed. But the key things I was told to ask was who, what, where, when, why, and how. And I think all of those questions still apply to edge, whether that's for an enterprise or for a telco. So an awful lot of questions to ask and answer in terms of edge. And again, it's going to come down to, well, who can think they can make some money out of edge computing.
Ray and Chris, thank you both very much indeed, and we'll see you again at the end of the week. But we must move on because, as you mentioned, coming up next in just a couple of hours from now, if you're watching live, is our first session, Geopolitics and the New Economic Models for DSPs. A timely discussion indeed. A reminder that you can join the conversation by asking questions to our panellists or by sharing your own views and opinions. This is your opportunity to join Ray and the team on the new Extra Shot programme. There'll be a call to action immediately after each session. You need to act fast though if you want to be included. Also, we have a poll for each session, so please take a second to take part. We're only asking one question for each poll, and you can find details of the questions and polls below the video player window here on TelecomTV. And if you're watching this embedded elsewhere, then head over to telecomtv.com/DSP. Whilst you're on the site, please take a look at the agenda page for details and timings of the full schedule. We also have info on all our panellists. And if you can't catch the sessions at their broadcast time, then they will all be made immediately available after for on-demand viewing. There is no escape. So mark your calendars, submit your questions, and we hope you enjoyed this year's DSP Leaders World Forum. The three of us will be back at the end of the week to recap, and who knows, perhaps even share a glass or two. And we'd be delighted if you'll join us, remotely of course. Bye for now.